Hi everybody, and thank you for coming to today's Crafternoon. My name is Ella and I work at the Laurel branch as in the Children's Services. Laurel is better known as the Dinosaur branch, which is why I have one of our mascots joining us today. And today I am going to show you how I make collaged bookmarks like these. These are really simple to make. I make them with recycled magazines and some kind of background paper, and I use a variety of materials for the little tassels, and I actually seal them with tape. So you don't need anything fancy like a laminator. You can make these at home. And they are inspired actually by this bookmark that I bought when I was 16 at an art show. I am well past the age of 16 now, but I've been using this ever since. And it's held up really well and I really like it. So I've just tried to kind of recreate this. This is actually sealed with Podge or Mod Podge, which I have, but I'm not going to be using that today. But if you are interested in kind of this look, shiny look, this is what you would use to seal it. And I will show you how to do that, even though that's not what I use. I actually use masking tape. So what you are going to need today to kind of make, not this fancy bookmark, but this basic bookmark right here, is you are going to need some masking tape to seal it. You're going to need a pencil or a pen just to kind of measure out how big the bookmark is going to be. I highly recommend a glue stick. And then you are also going to need some paper. Now I have what I keep all my paper in. Is this fancy looking, let me move this out of the way, this fancy looking shoebox basically. And so what I'll do when I am going through magazines is I'll cut out things that I think are cute looking and I'll save them in this box. So then I don't have a ton of magazines lying around. And I just kind of cut out whatever speaks to me. And most of the time I'll do like this where I don't cut it out entirely. I'll just kind of cut it out so I see what the shape I'm looking for is. And I highly recommend this way just because it keeps everything organized. And I have everything from old children's books in here. Like I said, I have magazines. Down at the bottom I have some coloring pages. I have wrapping paper that is cute that I keep in there. I've got some labels in case I want something to have a really clean white background. But just cutting out the general shape is a good way to kind of speed through, and then when I'm actually ready to make a bookmark like I'll show you today, then I go in and cut around and make it a little bit cleaner. But just having kind of scraps like this, I can kind of see what I'm working with really quickly without taking a ton of time to weed through them. Some of the other things that I'm going to recommend you have today is, of course, a pair of scissors. Does not have to be fancy scissors. I've had these scissors for years. And something to hold paper scraps with so that you can recycle them very easily afterwards. I'll just usually use the top of that same shoebox to kind of collect the scraps, and when I'm done I'll take them down to the recycling and just dump them all in. But it kind of helps keep the work area clean. Some of the other things that you can use that I do recommend is just kind of craft paper. And this is what you would use as like a wrapping paper. It's good to add some texture if you're looking for that kind of thing. I also have these big fancy things of scrap paper, which I will probably be using for the back, but not as a foreground, just because a lot of them are really busy looking. And as you can see with the bookmarks I've already made, I like the foreground to kind of be simple, whereas the back is where the fancy stuff happens. You don't have to make a tassel for the bookmarks. I really like kind of the tasseled look. Don't feel the need to do this, but if you do make a tassel, it's so much easier with a hole puncher. Forgot the word for a second, a hole puncher. I've also just used a sharp a sharp pair of scissors or a pen to just kind of stab a hole. It's less clean, but it does put a hole in there. And for the actual tassel part, you can use a variety of things. I have my trusty dinosaur here that holds a lot of my embroidery thread. I've got some twine that I have left over from another project, and then I've got some black yarn. So I use a lot of that in my crafts, but you can use anything. I've used everything from really fancy ribbon to dental floss if I can't find anything I want to use. So don't feel like you have to limit yourself to these kind of fancy purposeful string. You can kind of use whatever you want. I've used old shoelaces before. You can get pretty creative with it. One last thing, unlike the original bookmark that I bought, I don't tend to write on my bookmarks. You can, and I recommend it if that's what you want, in which case I do have some colored Sharpies with me, and I also have some washi tape from when I went through a phase and bought a ton of washi tape. So I might use some of that, I'm not sure yet, but I always like to have these things readily available in case I do decide to use them. So with all the craft stuff out of the way, I think we're gonna get started. So as just an overview, I know I showed you guys a lot of materials, but all you really need to get started is some glue, some packing tape, a pencil, some scissors, and some paper. And I'm just gonna grab some paper and put it there as well. You're also going to need something with a straight edge so that you can draw a straight line. I would recommend a ruler. I don't have one, so I'm just going to be using this tiny pad of paper or anything else within reach to kind of make sure that I can draw a straight line. So with all of that out of the way, I think we can get started. So I use packing tape for two main reasons. One of them is that it's really cheap and I have a ton of it at home. The second is because it makes a really good laminator. It's pretty water resistant. And the third is that it makes it really easy to measure the bookmarks. You can make them as long as you want, but I use the tape to kind of measure how thick my bookmarks are going to be. So for me, that makes it really easy. You don't have to do this. The other thing that you can do is if you want your bookmarks to be a little bit bigger, is you can use multiple pieces of tape to measure it. So if you were going to do one twice as thick, you would just put 2 slices of tape on it. I personally don't really like the way it looks when there is a divide right between the bookmarks, so I don't do it that way, but you're welcome to explore and be as creative with that as you would like to be. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is cut out the background of the bookmark that I'm going to make, and I like these to match when I can the front of the bookmark. So for example, oops, there we go. I have this bookmark that has blue and greens on the front, and then I like to have a blue background. Same with this other, again, blue one, where there's blue on the front. And then I like the blue, and I also really like that it has red polka dots because I feel like it plays in with these red splotches on the front. So for the one I'm gonna make today, I'm gonna use this red checkered pattern, and this does come from a book of scrap paper that I have lying around, but any kind of bold pattern will do. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, with an eyesight, measure out how big of a piece I'm going to need. So I'm going to line up the tape and make a mark. And I'm going to do this in a few different places just to make sure that I'm cutting straight. So I've done 2 in the middle, and I'm going to do one on the end on both sides. You can connect them if you want to. I usually don't. And so now I'm just going to use my scissors and cut along that line. So this is going to be the back of the bookmark. And you'll see it's got a little barcode there. That doesn't bother me as much because what's going to happen is this is going to be the outside and this is going to be the inside, so you're not even going to see that. But that's going to be the back of the bookmark. So for the front of the bookmark, I have a few images that I've already gone through my paper stash and picked out that I really like. So the first one is going to be this image of this very proper bunny from an old Peter Rabbit children's book that I had lying around. I have got this little kind of Victorian style moth that I took from a packet of paper scraps from a craft store. And then for the background, I'm going to be using this illustration from an old children's book as well. I really like mixing patterns like this, so I really like this kind of like colored look on this one, and then I'm going to be using the black and white illustrations on this one as well. And then for a foreground, what I'm going to use is this kind of, again, it's just a scrap of craft paper, but I really like that it also has a garden theme, and the pinks and the greens kind of play into the bunny look. So this is going to be the part where I actually cut this bunny out. Again, I like to store them not cut out because it really depends on the project. So for example, for this project, I'm not going to be using this kind of brown area as the shadow underneath of this bunny. In another project I might have, so I don't want to limit my options. I'm also probably not going to cut out all the whiskers just because that's going to take a long time. So I'm going to cut this out off screen and come right back. Alright, so I am done cutting out this bunny and knocking things over. And what you're going to notice right off the bat is that this bunny is way too big for this bookmark. So much bigger than the bookmark. So what happens a lot is that you'll find a really nice image that you like. For me, this was Edgar Allan Poe, but it's way too big for one bookmark. So what I'll do is actually make a second identical bookmark so that I still get the idea of the bookmark, but I can split it in two, and both of them kind of work as standalone bookmarks. But as you can see, this used to be one big picture that was just too big for the bookmark. So that's honestly probably what I'm going to do with the bunny. So what I'm going to do is actually just cut another strip of this for the background. And I may not have enough of this material to make a foreground for two bookmarks. So I'm going to look really quick to see if I have another pattern that I'm going to want to use, or if I can't find anything I like right now, I can always make one later. Alright, so I am in luck and I did find paper that is very similar to the one I'm using. Not the same paper, but very similar. So I'm going to cut this down into bookmark form, and I'm going to make one with this and then one with this one. Alright, so I have two bookmarks now, similar, not the same. You can see that this one's a little bit rugged on the ends, but that's okay because we're going to do some trimming later, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. So what I'm going to use is actually, before I put the bunny on, I am going to cut to see how much of this picture I want, because I want this picture, not even the turtle part, although the turtle is very cute. The part that I want is actually this part over here on both sides. And I like to make bookmarks with mirror images. You don't have to. So what I'm going to do is just measure that out. I want about that much. I don't want it to cover the whole background, but I want this kind of layering of different art styles. So I'm just going to trim a little bit off the end, and then I'm just going to glue that right on. But in fact, looking at it, I might not glue it on straight away. I like to layer it first to make sure it looks okay. So scratch that part about the gluing. All right, so now that I have this image cut out for both of the bookmarks, I have to decide how I want to center this rabbit. It's a really big picture, so I'm not going to be able to cut it straight down the middle like I normally would. The other thing that I want to remember is I do want to put this little moth in there, and I tend to put those things on top. So I'm going to move this image down just a little bit, and so the moth I will probably cut right in half. Or as close to half as I can get. So the bunny, I'm actually going to want to move down just a little bit so I have room for the moth. And I really like to cover the edges of what I'm working on. So you can see right here, there's a little edge. I want to just move the rabbit so it's covering that. So much paper. And so it's going to look like this. And I actually really like, even though most of the rabbit's going to be on the left bookmark, I like the look of it on the right one as well. So I think I'm just going to mark that and cut it right that way. And I'm going to cut the bottom off because I want her to be a little bit off center. I don't want her to be right in the middle of the picture because again, I want that moth in there. Awesome. So I like the way that looks on both. I like to have at least one eye on each side so you can see kind of the idea of the whole picture. So I like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start assembling this bookmark. And I'm going to start with the foreground and everything that's going to go on top of it. So I'm going to grab some glue. And I'm going to get started with the left one. And I tend to add a lot of layers. I like to have at least one kind of interesting layer of just kind of background noise. And then I like two kind of centerpieces. You don't have to do it that way. That's just the way I like doing it. And I'm not going to glue this down all the way yet because I want to make sure it's in the right place. So I'm going to glue down a bit of the bunny and just a bit of the moth, just to place them. And you can see that my cutting is just a little bit wonky. That's fine. I'm not here for perfection. And then the moth is going to go up there. And I don't want to cover the sun, but I want his antenna. So I'll probably put it right there. Perfect. So I'm going to just press down. I didn't finish gluing the bunny. Add some more glue. And you can see from the back that it is not straight on there. And again, that's fine if it has some pieces kind of hanging off the side. We'll trim those later. I just want everything to be stuck down. Still the sun debate. I'm gonna move it up just a little bit. Awesome, and I will just kind of come to terms with losing that antenna. I'm just gonna go around the edges and trim the axis off. The excess, the extra bits. You can just go across the edge of the scrapbook paper. Cool. So that's what it's gonna look like. I'm gonna take that paper and put it in my recycling container. And so I've got one down. And so now I'm gonna take the back and I'm just gonna glue it on. And as you might have seen from the original bookmarks I showed you, let me grab one. They're not that sturdy. They're pretty bendable. If you wanted to make them more sturdy, you could put a piece of cardstock in the middle of the two pieces. I'm not going to do that because I don't mind that they're wacky waving inflatable bookmarks, but if you wanted to make them a little bit sturdier, that's a place that you could do it. Or if you didn't have cardstock, you could just keep putting layers in between it and make it a little bit sturdier, but this is what it's going to look like. I like the red in this kind of blanket, mirrors the red on the back. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make the other one for the leftover bits. So I'm not going to narrate so much this time because you kind of know what I'm already doing. Just gluing paper to paper. As close to the edge as possible. And I'm going to stick the moth on first this time. And again, when you can cover kind of the edges, it's always nice to. I think it gives it a cleaner look. If you like the edges, ignore me. As long as you like the way it looks, it really doesn't matter what you put on there. Yeah, so normally if I was working with more material, I would put something here to kind of either extend this or close it off. This is the rest of the bunny that I have, and I might even add that to it. Yeah, let's add it. Why not? We've got time. So I am going to stick the sharp edges right behind the bunny, which is why I don't glue things down all the way the first time. Stick a little bit. There we go. Awesome. I like that. I'm glad we did that. I'm just going to add some glue. I like that because I feel like it adds some red where there was not red before. And it blends in a little bit better with her hat. And that's just some leftover blanket from the other one, I think. So I'm just gonna trim off those edges. And again, nothing is perfect. It's fine. There we go. All right, and I'm missing the background. And if you don't want to add a background, you don't have to. Don't feel like you're pressured to add a background. Do what makes you happy. I like the background. It makes me feel like when I flip it over that I didn't just forget to do one, but that I purposefully did something on the back. But if you don't mind that there's nothing on the back, then don't stress about it. All right, so now we've got our two bookmarks, which I think look lovely. As you can see, that whole thing about having an image that's too big. And normally I do like to have both images that way. So in a perfect world, I would have had the moths line up as well, but it is not a perfect world and I couldn't figure out how to do that. So I'm not gonna worry about it. But yeah, there are our two bookmarks. So now we're gonna get to the fake pseudo laminating part. So I am gonna cut some tape off screen because it's really hard to do with one hand. So bear with me. So now I just have a piece of packing tape and I'm gonna put it as close to the edge as possible. And then press down really fast. Really fast. There we go. All right. So as you can see, I always make it a little bit bigger than it has to be, just in case, but now you can see that it is laminated. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut off the ends. And if you're like me, I missed a little bit of the paper. You can see that the shine right there. There's the edge of the tape. And there's a little bit extra on this side where I missed it. It's fine. It happens. It's life. I am going to trim off the edge of this side, so it's not sticky. And I might add a little bit more tape because actually now that I'm looking closer, I can see that I missed it all the way down, But for now, what I'm going to do is actually use my fingernail, and what you can also use is the eraser part of your pencil, and just, you can kind of see how there's some air pockets right along the extra material right here, like where the bunny is. So I'm just going to smooth that down. Again, you can use your pencil. I'm going to use my hand. And just make sure to get all those air pockets out. Get it as close as possible. Some fingernail action. And that'll just smooth out your bookmark. And this one's not so bad because there's not as many layers. I've done ones before where I feel like I was doing this for hours. All right. Cool, so I'm gonna do the back. Same thing, I'm gonna cut the tape off camera because it's very difficult to do with one hand. All right, I've got my tape. Let's hope I don't miss this time. And you just kind of want to hover down and push it. All right, so you can see where my fingernail already started to really push the tape against the bookmark because it turns this kind of dark red color. I'm gonna do that for the whole thing. I'm gonna cut the ends off. And I cut too close, it's fine. Casual. It happens to the best of us. Gonna get rid of that tape. And I'm just gonna keep smoothing it down. Awesome. So you can see on the back that there are some parts around the edge that I missed. So I'm just going to trim them off. If you have a lighter color background, you're not going to notice this as much. But I chose red, which is unforgiving. And into the recycling with you. All right. So we've got one complete bookmark. And you can stop here if you'd like. This is a pretty nice bookmark, I'm not gonna lie. I like the way it turned out. I'm glad you guys talked me into doing this. But what if you want to add a tassel? What if you want to take it next level? Well, in that case, we are probably gonna need, there we go, the hole puncher. So this is super simple. I'm literally just gonna hole punch it. And I like to do it towards the top. You gotta push down pretty hard and wiggle it because you are going through tape, and tape is never wants to cut, but it actually worked out pretty well. You don't want to do it too close to the top, just because after wear and tear it will rip. So you want to do it a little bit farther down, and ideally like I did, through a few different layers so it holds on. But that's all you need. And again, you can use a pen, or if you have an X-Acto knife like I do left over from college, or some scissors, you can do it that way. But I thankfully have a hole puncher at home, and so that makes it a little bit easier. So now I'm going to add the tassel part. Got my trusty dinosaur. with all my embroidery thread. And I think I'm gonna add some twine because I feel like this is a very like cottage core, very like homey looking bookmark, very soft. So I think the natural twine is gonna look really nice with it if I can find the end. There we go. And I'm gonna take a few laps of twine. And then I also want to add some color. And let's see. I'm going to use this green. I know I don't really have green in this, but I feel like if the grass obviously were colored, it would be green. So I'm going to add some of that. It's a little bit strong. I'm going to use this kind of color changing thread. What else do I have in here? Ooh, and I've got this really pale yellow. I think that'll look nice. I think I'm going to stick with that. Some of the other ones I've done, this is one with a lot of fruit and flowers, so I had just a little bit of this kind of lace left over, so I used that. And I used the same twine, but I kind of ripped it open, and I'll show you how I did that because I personally really like this distressed look. If you don't like it, you don't have to unravel the string, but I like the way it looks. And I had another one, there it is. So this is kind of a darker one. It's got skulls on it. It's got some leaves that I put on it. So for this one, I did green and black. And again, I kind of distressed the string so it looked a little rugged. And for this one, I used actually the same thread. And then I used this black thread right here as kind of an accent. So I'm actually going to show you how I did this one, and then I'm going to show you the one that we made together. So like I said, I like to make them in pairs when possible, these bookmarks. For this one, I really liked the background. This is actually just a rock. I found it in a magazine. It was part of a cave, and I liked it, so I used it as background for both. Actually, it might go this way. I don't know which way it goes. And so I wanted to brighten it up, so I made these two bookmarks. So this one already has a hole punched in there, and I did cut the string already. So what we're going to do is we're going to loop it. So it's got a little loop. And we're going to stuff that through the hole punched hole. And I tend to do it front to back. You don't have to do it that way. I just do it that way because I can. And so now that you've got a loop, now you've got the string sticking through in a loop, you're gonna put the extra and loop it through the top, just like that. And then you're gonna pull it tight. And this one doesn't have any, but if you have any that have kind of loose strings, so say it looked like that, where like some of them were loose, you can pull the individual strands and that will tighten it up. Pretty easy. So let's do the one we made together. I have this twine that I just randomly cut at length. You're gonna want to cut it about the length of your hand, a little bit more, because you want enough to loop through. And if you want to do something fancy like braiding it, you're obviously going to want it a little bit longer. So I'm just going to keep measuring it against the string I already cut. That's about hand length. So I've got 3, which I feel like is enough. Let's do 4. Let's be bold. And just remember, however many strands you cut, it's going to be double. So I've got 4 strands here, but when I loop them through, then it's going to be 8. And so I'm going to do a green accent, maybe more than one. I'm going to do more than one. It's pretty. It's this pale green color, which I really like. I feel like it's not overpowering. And I'm going to do just one yellow. Sorry, green. Only one yellow just because it looks so much like the twine. All right, so now I'm going to line all these up. I'm rethinking the amount of twine that I cut. I'm going to line all these up at the end. You know what? I'm going to stick with 3. I know I cut this one. I'll save it for another project. You're going to line them all up. You're going to fold it in half like we did before. And you're going to make sure that you have all the strings in that loop. There we go. And it's easiest if you flatten it out. Twine's really good like that. We're going to stick it through. We're going to see it on the other side. We're going to fan it out to make sure that we have all the strings. Yellow was looking weird for a second. And then we're just going to loop it. There we go. And pull it through. And this is kind of what I was talking about, where some of the string won't go all the way, in which case you would just go through and individually pull all the string just to make sure it's really tight. Twine is very difficult in this way. All right, I think I got most of it. So this is what it's going to look like, and you can see they're all different lengths, so I'm going to trim them. Into the trash, not recycling. So now they're all the same length. And if you like it like this, you can leave it like this. But I, like I said before, like it looking a little bit more distressed, so that's what I'm going to do with it. So string is really easy because it's usually already fraying a bit. You can see this light one right here is already coming apart. So what you're going to do is just go as close to the end as possible. And I see one string, there we go. Close to the end as possible. And you're just going to turn it the opposite way that it's threaded. And that will unthread it. You're going to stick your fingernail in there and you're going to pull. And you can see how it's threaded this way to the right. So if I twist it to the left, it's going to come undone. There we go. And I'm just going to do this. I like to do this, so I'm going to do it for all of them. You don't have to. Especially if you have material that's not going to fray very easily, like a ribbon. You don't have to do this. Or if you like it cleaner looking. It's whatever you want it to look like. I enjoy the chaos. There we go. All right, so the twine is notoriously difficult because it is coated in some type of covering. So for this one, I really am going to want to turn it the opposite way. You can see how it's starting to break up here. And this one I might not be able to get all the way at the bottom, but I'll get pretty close. And I'm going to stick my fingernail in there again and just pull. There we go. And once you get your fingernail in there, stick your finger in there and then just pull up. And that will make it a lot easier. You might lose some pieces, that's fine. I didn't want those pieces anyway. All right, so same thing. We can see how it's turning this way. So we're going to twist it the opposite way, and it already starts to fray. And then we're going to stick our nail right in there. If your nails aren't long enough to do this, which is fair, my nails are pretty short, or if you don't want to use your fingernail, you can stick like a pencil or a pen in there, and that'll work too. I just prefer to do it with my finger. All right, that might be as much as this one wants to fry. It's afraid of being alone. Here. So I am not going to do the string, because I already showed you how to do that. I'm going to do one more for prosperity's sake, and then I'm going to show you how to seal these with Mod Podge, if that is your preference. Come on. Maybe go from the top. Yeah. All right. There we go. All right, so this is what it will eventually look like. I like the chaos. You don't have to like it, that's fine. So this is one finished bookmark. All right, so if you liked the way that my original bookmark looked that I did not make, I do have the second one of the bookmarks we made today. It has not yet been laminated. So you can use this material. It's called Mod Podge. I call it Mod Podge. So if you hear me say Mod Podge, this is what I'm referring to. It should have been called Mod Podge. It is not. You can get this at the craft store, and you can use it as a sealer, glue, and finish, which I use it for all three. So if you just had this, you'd be in good shape. So what you would do is you would cover the back of these, stick them on, and then also cover the top. Like a weird glue sandwich. Let's see if I can open this. So I'm not going to tell you how long I struggled with that. Let me just say it was a really long time. But this is what it looks like. It is just kind of like thick glue. If you've never used it, you can kind of see it moving. Lasts a long time. So here is where there's a cross in the roads. You can either get out a paintbrush, which I have, or you can do like I do, which is not the way to do it, and just stick your finger in it. So if you're going to use a paintbrush, pick a paintbrush that you don't like, because it's never going to be the same again. You're just going to put a little bit on the paintbrush. You're going to get your bookmark. You're just going to brush it over it. You're just going to put a really light coat. Doesn't have to be drenched. Or if you're like me and have no time for that, you can just stick your finger in it. It's not going to hurt you. It's just glue. And put it on like that. Either way. Because I'm trying to be professional, I will use the paintbrush. Just know that I long to use my finger. And so there are pros and cons to this. The pro is that you're not going to have that like weird looking tape finish, which granted is a nice kind of quick way to laminate, but you know, if you don't get the pockets out, it does look like it's been taped. The con is that this takes a while to dry, depending on how thick of a coat you put on there. And you may have to put several coats. So you can see that it's got a shine to it. You can see that I've gotten almost all of it. And so I'm going to have to wait for this to dry and then flip it over and do the back. But this does give it a thinner finish, so it's not as bulky as the other finish, although you do want to get in the corners, same as if there were air bubbles, and just kind of brush them out. And just go the opposite way. There we go. So again, cleaner finish. It's going to take forever to dry, but art is not a race. So it's up to you how you want to finish them. So thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like we made two really good bookmarks. Again, this one is the Mod Podge, which I did not poke a hole in because it's still wet, but it is nice and shiny. This one is the one we finished with tape. and you can see kind of where the ears are. There is a little air pocket, but it's fine. It gives it a little glossiness. This one's going to dry a little bit cleaner. The Mod Podge that I use is a gloss one right up here. They do sell it in matte though. If you wanted something that isn't as shiny, they do sell that as well. So that's your preference. But if you don't have Mod Podge, like I would imagine most people don't, because it's a really, I feel, weird thing to buy from the craft store, tape works just fine and it looks really nice. And now we have two matching bunny bookmarks, one of which has the little tassel, the other does not. They both look really good. So that's it. Let us know via social media if you made bookmarks, what they look like, what you're using them for. You can tag us on social media using our which is at PGCMLS. And I would love to see if you guys have made bookmarks, or again, what you're using them for. They make cool gifts. They make cool gifts for yourself, for your family. I just like to stockpile them because that's the kind of person I am. But I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you tune in for more Crafternoons.